We bring in now Ryan Girdusky, who was sharing an interesting poll that we started off the show discussing, the Siena, New York State poll. And Ryan, we bring you on because we like you to break down the data for us. And I want to start with the question that I started the show with today, and that was, according to that poll, Donald Trump now leads in New York State among Jewish voters. I believe the number was 53 to 44. Did that surprise you? Does it have staying power? Have we seen a shift based on October 7th? How would you analyze this as it pertains to the Jewish vote, not only in New York, but potentially around the country?
So there have been 3 polls about the Jewish vote since October the 7th about New York State, all by Siena. And Trump's numbers among Jewish voters in the subset of the Siena poll went from 29% on October the 15th to 54%, and 53% rather, in the latest poll that came out today. It's a significant shift. It's very, very high. And nationwide, we don't know the exact number, but he got about 30 to 33% of the Jewish vote in 2020 nationwide. I'm not exactly sure of New York. New York, unlike other places with significant, New York has the largest Jewish population in the country. 9% of the entire state is Jewish, but it also has one of the largest Orthodox and Hasidic populations, which tend to be far more Republican, not just by the average Jewish voter, but far more Republican than the average voter. And Orthodox and Hasidic voters, especially on federal issues, vote very, 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 very Republican. So what we could be seeing in New York, and the reason why New York moved so far right, could be because the poll could have oversampled Orthodox and Hasidic voters, or it could be that just these voters are just moving to the right over several issues, especially with the growth of anti-Semitism that we've seen from the far left in this country.
Hey, Ryan, it's Buck. You know, the migrant situation in New York, we're just talking about the Jewish vote in New York. Migrant situation is obviously also getting a lot of national attention. There's this video of cops fighting at Randall's Island, which is where I used to play high school sports, just as a side note. We used to have the facilities there for basketball, soccer, football, outdoor sports. And they've now turned it into a refugee camp. I mean, there's a refugee camp on Randall's Island. NYPD having to fight and kick and punch with migrants who were throwing chairs at them and everything else in this 3,000-bed facility. It felt like the Democrats believed they had it all moving in, or they thought they had a strategy with this bill that then Republicans in the Senate did not go along with. But what are we seeing in terms of actual perception and numbers on that one? Because now they're saying Biden may take matters into his own hands. And it's like, well, hold on. I thought he couldn't do that before.
Right. I mean, Biden always had the ability to do something on immigration. This is not like this is the first president who's ever had a border crisis. We've had every president, recent president's had a border crisis of one form or the other, and every president's done executive things. I mean, Joe Biden stood on a stage, said he would give free health care to illegal aliens. He wouldn't deport them, and he would try to fast track away for amnesty. So, of course, they came. And I think what a lot of misperception from Democrat elected officials was, well, how bad could the border crisis be? We've dealt with border crises of 1 million people in the past before. We've never dealt with a border crisis of 7 million people. And my comment I always make to people is, what are you going to do when 100 million people come? Because if you continue to do what is going on, 100 million people will eventually make their way into the United States of America, be dependent on the state, overwhelm the systems, and the systems will collapse. You have Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts just cut a state program dedicated to funding firefighters for smaller or lower income municipalities in the state to pay for their migrant crisis. In New York State, we're looking at sanitation and police force cuts. Denver is dealing with similar cuts. Chicago will deal with the same exact thing. They cannot afford this migrant crisis at the level it is. And if Biden wins a second term, it will I wouldn't be shocked if it doubled. And it will 100% bankrupt many, many municipalities or see vast spending cuts throughout these municipalities. So As far as it goes with Democrats, I mean, you saw Thomas Suozzi in the special election in New York 3rd talk about needing to create, some kind of plan that sits there and militarize the border and protect the border. I think Democrats, are, especially in swing areas, are seeing the writing on the wall. There was a bill to make DUIs and Social Security fraud a deportable offense, and every Democrat in the country in a moderate to swing district voted in favor of the bill. It was only Democrats in deep, deep blue districts that voted against this. But I think the perception is there, and the perception that Democrats are weak on the border is going to be very hard to shake with or without this single bill.
We're talking to Ryan Girdusky. Ryan, I want to go back to that Siena poll because the other thing that stood out to me was Trump wins, I think it was 47-41, something like that, among male voters. That is, it's kind of shocking for, I think, a lot of people. Trump would win New York State if only men were voting. But the gender gap is insane when it comes to women and their rejection of Trump. Is that the story writ large to you in many ways for 2024? And I understand there's a difference. Buck and I talked about it between married women and single women. It's really single women that are really turning their backs on Trump and the Republican Party in general. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think if only men voted, Trump would win 50 states, basically. And if only women voted, Biden would win 50 states. We're setting up for potentially the biggest gender imbalance maybe that we've ever seen. Do you see that ameliorating, changing somewhat, or are we locked and loaded on one of the biggest gender gaps of all time?
Well, if this is the fact, is if only men voted, the last Democrat we would have elected in this country was Lyndon Johnson in 1964.
That's an amazing stat. Repeat that again. So if only men voted, the last Democrat that would have won was Lyndon Johnson in 1964?
Yes, it's the last time the Democrats won the male vote. It is. I mean, it's the 19th Amendment, but that is ultimately what changed it. And that is. I mean, the young female vote, and there's a lot of studies on this. And younger women are more radicalized. They are more democratic than younger men are, and it's increasing that. I mean, between college, the loss of religion, and the lack of prospects for marriage, which are the three things that push women to vote more Republican, all those three things are enabling women to become more radicalized in progressive beliefs. And that, I don't know how that changes or when that changes, but that is what's happening. And on the flip side, you're seeing younger men becoming more Republican and more conservative in their beliefs as well. And there's a huge problem in the sense that younger people under the age of 18, don't date that often. They delay adulthood for longer and longer periods of time. They don't drive as early as they don't work as early as older generations do. There's a book called Generations by Gene Tweppe, the author, who talks a lot about this. And that's a huge problem going forward. But it is the great gender divide, and I don't know how that happens or how it fixes. It's just a matter of do married women sit there and show up in the polls, and do unmarried men show up? Because unmarried women, the Democratic Party has become not only their hobby and their political belief, but also their church in many cases.
No, that's so fascinating. And by the way, quickly here, and then Buck wants to dive in, but when you were saying that, does the data reflect that women become more conservative when they get married, or men become more liberal? In other words, when we get the marriages here, what does the data show us?
Usually it's who has the stronger beliefs in the marriage. I mean, if you're a moderate voter and you marry a very conservative or liberal person, you will tend to reflect the beliefs. Your moderation will decrease, and you will have the beliefs of whoever you marry. It's a lot like religion. The kids will often follow the religion of the parent who is more religious.
Ryan Girdusky with us, and his Substack, which you should check out, is the National Populist Newsletter. Ryan,
thank you.
You're very straightforward on your assessment of things. One of the reasons we like having you on. What is Nikki Haley doing? We got a few days before South Carolina. What is the play here? What is the plan?
I mean, look, what does she have to lose by staying? I always say she doesn't have a job to go home to. The kids are grown. The husband's out in the military. There is nothing. She's always wanted to run for president. I mean, so she takes this position where she doesn't drop out until Trump gets the needed delegates, which is basically, I think, what Cruz did last time in 16, and what other people have done in the past. They just waited out. Newt Gingrich didn't win a state for a long time before he dropped out. And, you know, if something happens to Trump, something happens with his health, something happens with, I don't know, whatever, and she's the nominee, what does she have to lose? I mean, so why not pick up a few delegates? She's already made history in this election. She is the first presidential candidate to lose to nobody, and she's also the first woman Republican to ever win a county in a primary. So, I mean, she can hang that, on her, on her crown and just stay there because she's got nothing. There's nothing to do when she goes home. She'll go work for Boeing or something like that, but she has nothing to lose. It's not like she's going to run for Senate of South Carolina or something like that.
All right, Ryan. If the election, we're sitting almost at, 8 months out. If the election were today, all right, I'm putting you on the spot.
Michelle Obama was not the nominee. Yeah.
Michelle Obama. Yeah. Okay. You and Buck can take your tag team Royal Rumble, clotheslines.
Ryan is a brilliant analyst of politics. For those who don't know.
What would happen in the election today if tomorrow was election day? What do you think the results would look like?
I always said that Biden still had the advantage. I think that the DOJ report is really just as damaging as it could possibly be. I've never seen something like that before as far as what it says. At the end of the day, listen, the major states that are at play are going to be, it's 8 states that decide this entire election: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, and maybe New Hampshire if it becomes into play. It's very, very few states. Most of those states are 90 to 95% black, white states, with the exception of Florida and Arizona and Nevada. And North Carolina and Georgia, I forgot those two. Those states will decide this election. I think that the 3 big questions that I don't have the answer to right now. Does RFK get on the ballot? Number one, because I heard from top Biden officials that is one of their biggest concerns, is that RFK gets ballot access. Number 2, does the black vote decrease? In 2016, the black vote was 12% of the population, national vote. In 2020, it was 13%. It was like 1.3% higher. That was the deciding factor in 2020, was the black vote. And lastly, if Trump is going to lose the college-educated votes, which are the college-educated women vote, do non-college-educated white voters, which are the bedrock of the Republican Party, do they show up in full force? Those are the 3 things that will decide this election. Everything else is really just window dressing as far as just political punditry goes. But I think
so you
right
dodged
now,
it. Would you say Trump is a favorite right now if the election were tomorrow?
For the very first time, I really think that Trump is becoming the favorite of this. Yeah, I do. For the first time, I didn't believe that beforehand, but I do now.
I love it. Ryan means it because he doesn't want to say it. That's the great. He doesn't like to get our hopes up.
I hate making predictions, but that is for the very first time between the DOJ report and between Biden's just abysmal numbers and Kamala is just, there's just no safe place to rest your eyes for the Biden campaign. They're very confident at the same exact time. I don't see how they're going to sit there and pull this one out unless the black vote surges to record high numbers, or non-college educated white voters sit on their hands. But I don't think either one of them are going to happen.
Ryan Girdusky, he's awesome. Buck, what's the Substack to be able to follow him?
National Populist Newsletter. I am a happy subscriber. I recommend it to you all.
Boom. There you go. Thank you, Ryan. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.